Chapter 34, Junie. As my drug use progressed, so did my violence. However, I still played baseball every chance I got. I was still pretty good at it. Once in a while, I would go by Western Avenue, Potomac Street, and play baseball with the Western boys. The Western boys knew about my gang activity, so they were reluctant to let me play with them. They made me promise not to represent while I was with them and to walk away if a rival gang spotted me. The Western boys had a new member. His name was Junior, but everybody called him Junie. Junie was a puny kid with hazel eyes and brown hair. He had moved to Chicago from New York. Junie was fun to be around. He always made jokes and tried to make people laugh. He was a good kid. His parents were very nice people too. They never objected to me coming over for dinner or sleeping over. They cared for and loved Junie a hell of a lot. I could feel the love in their house. It made me wish that my own family had been as close and caring. Junie had heard about me from the other Western boys. He told me he wanted to be a king. He bugged me until I gave him details of my gang war stories. I didn't encourage him to be like me, but I didn't discourage him either. His first cigarette, his first beer, his first joint, he had them all with me. He learned how to represent the king's hand sign and the king's handshake by watching me. The Western boys set up a baseball game against a team led by some members of the Clemente baseball team. Junie was very excited about this game. It was all he talked about. He was planning on trying out for the baseball team when he became a freshman at Clemente the following year. The game was set for early Saturday morning. We met the Friday before the practice. We practiced until mid-afternoon, and then everybody went home. Everybody except for me, that is. I didn't have a home. I walked Junie to his house on Claremont Street, across the street from Tully. From there, I headed to a restaurant right on the corner of Western and North Avenue called Taco Loco. I had some money on me, so I decided to eat there and then call Morena or someone else from Cadetsy and Armitage to pick me up. I was crossing Lemoyne Street, one block before North, when I heard footsteps walking up behind me fast. I reached for my 25 but realized I didn't have it. Thank God I didn't need it. At Taco Loco, I ordered food for both of us and began feeding quarters into the pinball machine. By the time we realized what time it was, night had fallen. I told Junie I would walk him home. I knew he would be in trouble, but Junie was sure that as long as his parents realized he was with me, everything would be alright. We walked down north toward Claremont and then proceeded up Claremont toward Tully. As we walked, a carload of guys drove by and yelled King Love. I didn't recognize the car or the guys, so I didn't respond. Junie, on the other hand, returned the greeting and then looked at me, waiting for my approval. "Those are your boys, Lil Loco. Amor del Rey, man. Amor del Rey," Junie said. I didn't say anything to him. I just kept walking and talked about the baseball game. I became worried about the car that had passed. I looked, and sure enough, it was coming again. By this time, we were almost by St. Aloysius Church on Claremont and Lemoyne. I became truly worried, but didn't want to do anything that made me look like a punk in front of Junie. What if they were Latin kings in that car? How foolish would I look, ducking or hiding from my own boys? No, I had to play it cool and show no fear. The church had a cement canopy over the Claremont entrance. Cement slabs held it up. I began to lead Junie toward it so that we could hide. Just before we got behind the cement slabs, King Love was yelled again. Junie turned around and walked away from me. I reached out to grab him, but I missed. He walked by the side of the street and yelled, "King Love." "Don't, Junie, don't. Come back," I yelled as I ran toward him. Before I got to him, I heard two booms like cannons going off. I heard Junie scream as I threw myself to the concrete. Then I heard the car screech as it sped away. When I lifted my head, Junie lay there bleeding to death. He was shot twice in the chest. I picked up his head and cradled it, screaming my head off. "Help, help, somebody call an ambulance," I screamed. Junie was gasping for air, trying to talk, muttering something about how his mom was going to be mad at him. "Don't, Junie, don't die," was all I could say. His last words were, "Tell the guys I won't be playing tomorrow." I sat there with him in my arms. But it was much too late for all that. Junie was dead. About 20 minutes passed before the police finally arrived, but still no ambulance. A crowd of people gathered. The police began asking the usual "what happened" questions. As usual, everybody denied seeing or hearing anything. As always, everybody said, "We just got here." A police officer told me to let Junie go and stand up. I began screaming, "He's dead, he's dead." The officer grabbed me by the hair and said, "I told you to let him go," as he pulled me upward. The officer pulled me up, slammed me to the concrete, and handcuffed me. By this time, there were police all over the place. Detectives from the gang crime division put me in their car and began asking me questions. They asked me who did it. Before I could answer, they asked me what gang Junie and I were in. His father stood there with a blank look on his face, staring directly at me. I told the police about the car passing by, representing the Kings, and that Junie represented back. I clarified that Junie was not a gang member, but that I was a Latin King. One detective said, "You got your friend killed. I bet you really feel like a man now, huh?" The other said, "You better think about this. Next time it may be you." After assuring themselves that I could not give any better description of the car or its passengers, they took me out of the car and took off the handcuffs. After giving me several warnings about continuing with gang activity, the detectives let me go. The paramedics finally showed up after Junie had laid there for 45 minutes. I looked on from across the street as the police pulled Junie's mother away so that the paramedics could take his body. My clothes were drenched in his blood. Junie's mother looked my way and noticed the blood. She ran over to me screaming and swinging her arms at me. "Son of a bitch, what did you do to my son?" she screamed as she repeatedly slapped my face. I just stood there looking at the ground and feeling guilty about Junie's death. The punishment I was receiving was well deserved. Junie's father grabbed his wife and took her away. He came back and looked at me with a real hard expression on his face and said, "We're not supposed to kill each other. Don't you go killing somebody in the name of my son," he said. "If you didn't care enough to keep him alive, don't act like you care now that he's dead." Junie's father released me. I fell to the ground and he walked away angrily. I had this numb feeling inside. I wished I had a joint or a beer so that I could forget what had just happened. Junie was taken away. His parents went with the police and all the onlookers went back to whatever it was they were doing. Life went on. When the Kings saw me coming, they freaked out. They thought I had been shot because of the blood on my clothes. I went to the clubhouse and told everybody what had happened. I had my other clothes there, so I cleaned up, changed, and began getting high to numb the pain. I began asking for Morena. She had my pistols and I wanted to go get revenge for what had happened to Junie. Morena finally did show up and gave me the 25, but Loco had already talked me into cooling out for the night. He explained that the police would be expecting some kind of retaliation. He said I should wait for the next night, Saturday. I didn't sleep all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Junie dying in my arms. Saturday morning, Cubana came and brought me my breakfast. I pretended to be mad at her for not being around all night. I could have used her comfort. Cubana had regained her title as my confidant. After talking to Cubana for a little while, I finally fell asleep. Again, Junie was in my dreams. I saw him covered with blood. Then I saw the bullet enter and exit the Shy West girl. Then I saw myself covered with blood. Bullets entered Junie and he fell, calling to me. I stood there doing nothing. I woke up screaming and cursing. I drank a bottle of wine like it was water. Cubana tried to calm me, but I pushed her away. I grabbed my gun and went outside. I ran all the way to Morena's house. She had moved from Maplewood Park and lived across the street from Humboldt Park on Cadetsy. She lived about a mile away from the clubhouse. I went there to get my other gun. I wanted to kill somebody. I decided the only way to get Junie out of my dreams was to avenge his death. Morena questioned me about why I wanted the gun. I told her about what had happened to Junie. "I'm going to kill one of those fucking Cobras." Junie was killed in Spanish Lord's territory, and since the Cobras were their rivals, it was logical to think that they had done it. "Now give me the fucking gun." Morena gave me the gun and told me to wait while she put her shoes on so she could come with me. As soon as she went into the bedroom, I took off running. I ran to Cadetsy and North Avenue and got on the bus. I blamed the Cobras for pulling the trigger that killed Junie. It had to be them. I got off the bus on Campbell Street and walked southbound toward the Cobras' hood. When I got to Hurst Street, Lucky and Cubana pulled up in front of me in a car. Morena came running behind me. They were able to talk me into waiting until later that night when more Cobras would be out. I went to Morena's apartment and stayed there all day smoking weed and watching television. Cubana was there with me for a while but left when I rudely rejected her romantic advances. I was in no mood for any kind of affection. I didn't want to eat, I didn't want to talk, all I wanted to do was get high. I wanted time to fly by so I could go out and shoot a cobra. By nightfall, I was highly intoxicated and anxious to commit an act of violence. Lucky tried to talk me into letting someone else do the hit. I refused. When he said I would have to go alone, I started walking towards the cobra's hood. He realized I was serious and told me to get in the car. Lucky drove by Cortland and Whipple and picked up Queen Loca. Along the way, Lucky explained to her what was going on. Loca had no problem with it. She was actually excited about it. Loca was about 25 years old. She was a short, dark-skinned Puerto Rican girl with a New York accent. She got her nickname because of her itchy trigger finger and because she would fight just about anybody, man or woman. Loco had some martial arts training and was good at it. We drove up Humboldt Boulevard to Division Street, then headed east. After some debate, we decided to hit the Disciples on Rockwell and Potomac Streets instead of the Cobras. We drove up Division to Rockwell and went north on Potomac. The plan was for Loca and me to open fire when Lucky turned west on Potomac and Rockwell. I had my .38 with me. Lucky handed Loca a .45 automatic. Loca was very proficient with guns. She pulled out the clip, checked the chamber, then put the clip back in the gun. She pulled out the clip, checked the chamber, then put the clip back in and held the gun in a ready position. We opened all the windows and got ready to shoot. As we got closer, we noticed there were a lot of disciples hanging out on all four corners. There was also a lot of traffic due to the heavy drug sales going on out there. "Look at all those motherfuckers," Loca said as she rolled down her window. When we got to the corner, Loca began shooting before Lucky made the turn. I began shooting also. Lucky made the turn at a rapid speed. The disciples were shooting back. The back windshield shattered as we sped away down Potomac. Lucky crossed California Avenue and drove right through the park until we got to the Parkway. We drove across Sacramento Avenue and ditched the car. Lucky told us to get rid of the guns, then began running toward Cadetsy. Loca grabbed me by the arm and took me away toward Augusta Avenue. I looked back toward the car and noticed 3 bullet holes on the driver's side. I could only imagine what the passenger side looked like, since that's where most of the retaliatory gunshots had come from. We had to get off the streets fast.